Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a think tank in Washington, D.C. They've been around for over 50 years and they work on public policy that is social issues, defense, spending, and economics, and all different kinds of issues. They work to be the conservative outpost in Washington because there aren't that many groups in Washington, D.C. that represent the interests of the people, and so that's what Heritage looks to do. Now, they're an educational think tank, so in 2010 they started Heritage Action. We're the political advocacy side, so we work with citizens and Congress and state legislatures to ensure that good policy ideas are becoming reality. So that's what our goal is, to talk to citizens and equip you all to have the right information and go talk to your members of Congress and state legislators. A little bit about how you get involved with us. Sentinel is our community of getting citizens involved. We don't go to places and set up communities, rather we look to equip groups that already exist so that as you're meeting in groups like this, you're getting the same information where you can be the most effective as possible when you're talking to your legislators and members of Congress. On Mondays at 2:30 Pacific time, we do an exclusive call called the Sentinel Strategy Call, where we peel back the curtain about what's happening in Washington, D.C., and our people in D.C. walk through what is happening in Congress, what bills are they going to vote on, and then they go through what is Republican leadership saying, and is that the conservative position? Because oftentimes what Republican leadership says is not the conservative thing that is in line with the Constitution. So we want to make sure that you're armed with those talking points and that you can call your members of Congress and have the right information. We also follow up with emails throughout the week so you're getting the most up-to-date information to take action. We have a strategy called the Inside-Outside strategy. We want to make sure that what congressional offices are hearing it's the same message coming from the citizens in our DC office. We have a few people in the DC office who are lobbyists, but they are lobbying for the Constitution. We call them the anti-lobbyist lobbyists because everything other lobbyists are doing, they're lobbying for the exact opposite. And the same talking points that they're using are the ones that we're digesting to you and making sure that that intel loop is going back and forth so that we can keep you updated and that if you give us valuable intel, our DC people are updating the offices there. It's election season. One very good tool to have in your back pocket when you're talking to voters is our scorecard. If you go to heritageaction.com, you can look at the scorecard. Right here we have Senator Jackie Rosen. She has a 0% score for this session. That is a little bit below the average Senate Democrat. Average Senate Democrat's at 4%, she's at 0%. But we try to take some of the most important votes that Congress is voting on and highlight why it's bad when they vote against it. One of them right now that we want to highlight is the impeaching Mayorkas. So I'm thinking about House. Okay, yes, impeaching Mayorkas. So the Senate resolution is up there and she has not supported it so far. In the House, if you go to your House members, the one that we're highlighting is H.R. 2. The House and Congress, they passed the best border security bill that has been voted on in years. And the House voted on it and passed it, but all of the Democrats in Nevada voted against it. So that's one to highlight as you're talking to voters. And you can go to the website, heritageaction.com, and go to the scorecard, and it'll give you all the information you need as you're highlighting those votes to citizens. Another big undertaking that we have at Heritage that I want to talk about before I get into ranked choice voting is Project 2025. Rather than us deciding to put a bunch of money into a presidential primary, what Heritage did, along with about 100 other organizations, is we put together a policy playbook and personnel agenda so that the next conservative administration, presumably a Republican, can hit the ground running with the right content and people to drain the swamp. So it's a policy agenda along with a 180-day playbook that goes through items like if you want to get rid of the Department of Education, how do you get rid of it, and then give anything that they're doing that's necessary to other departments. So it goes in depth with that. It's some of the best conservatives in DC, over 100 groups, And we also have a personnel database of 10,000 and more people who have been vetted and want to work in the next administration.
Wow.
So if any of you or people you know are interested in working in the next conservative administration, go to project2025.org. And there are people working on this who were in Trump's cabinet back in 2020 before he left office. So we know that whoever wins on the conservative side, the presumptive nominee right now is Trump. It's probably going to be Trump. And if he wins, we are optimistic that he is going to use this because so many groups have dedicated a lot of resources, and it will ensure that more is done in the first 180 days than last time around in 2016. On election integrity, Nevada is in a sorry shape according to our election integrity scorecard. So we have a scorecard that you can view online and go to the different categories. But after COVID, the laws radically changed here. You all are operating under that and know that. But even though the laws are not going to change before the next election, one of the best ways that you can get involved is as a poll worker or poll watcher. So continue to advocate for election integrity, but also serve on election day as a poll worker or poll watcher, because that's the only way that more integrity is going to be added to the elections until then. Yes?
What about counting? Because you remember Biden said it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. So don't you think we would be better served in where they're counting votes?
Yeah, so my understanding is that if you apply through the county, that there are opportunities to go to the central tabulation facilities, and that's one of the numerous roles you can do as an election worker. So that would be a great way to do it. Yes?
Do you guys have any sort of training to be a poll watcher or to be a counter, what to look out for?
As things ramp up, there will be more groups doing training. We may do some. If not, there are going to be other groups in the area that are doing training. So yes, that will be coming shortly. All right, on to ranked choice voting. We also call it rigged choice voting because it is a system where it allows people who are very political to have an outsized say in what happens in an election. Right here you'll find a ballot. This is a sample ballot from Alaska in 2022 for ranked choice voting. In a normal election, you will have a few candidates. Let's say there's 4 candidates, and you would select one bubble. You would fill in the bubble for the one person who you want to represent you in that race. Ranked choice voting is a little bit different. You have 4 candidates for U.S. Senator, and then you have a first choice, a second choice, a third choice, a fourth choice, and a fifth choice if you have a write-in candidate. So in ranked choice voting, you are asked to rank in order of your preference in every single race, your first to last choice. And I know that makes no sense to you right now because it's a very confusing system. So another way of explaining it, if you're going to do a ranked choice voting election, in round 1, what happens is you as a voter get your ballot. You rank in every single race your favorite candidate from first all the way down to last. After that, you mail in your ballot or you take it to the polling place, and what happens is they tabulate it like a normal election. Now, if no one is winning a true majority in a particular race after that, then your ballot then gets taken and it gets retabulated. So every voter who voted for the last place candidate, those votes would then be redistributed to their next choice. So the bottom candidate would be booted. Let's say it's Mickey Mouse, Daffy Duck, and Peter Pan. Peter Pan gets last place. Peter Pan is out. Everyone who voted for Peter Pan would then have their vote redistributed to Daffy Duck or Mickey Mouse. So that's what happens. It's an algorithm being run in the machine, and it gets retabulated. And this process occurs until a majority is finally created. Now, it's a fake majority because it's not necessarily representative of everyone who voted in that election. So this is the confusing process of ranked choice voting and how it happens in an election. And the rounds can keep going and going and going. I'm going to walk through 3 different points about why it's a bad process and give some examples about how it's gone wrong in other states. So first point is ranked choice voting is confusing. When you're talking to voters, the first thing to highlight is how confusing of a system it is. If you can't just explain it to them, then they're going to be very confused filling out that ballot. If it's someone who's not a political person and they just want to show up on election day, they may throw up their hands and say, I have no clue what I'm doing in this process, and that makes it where voters feel like they're not part of the representative republic anymore. So ranked choice voting, it's confusing because it forces voters to rank candidates who they do not support. As conservatives, you're going to be asked to rank multiple far-left candidates and choose which one of them you prefer over the other. All of them could be abortion extremists, all of them could be for pro-trans policies for children, and you have to make a decision about who you prefer out of them. A couple examples about ranked choice voting being confusing. In 2022, in the Alaska U.S. House race, which was one of the sample ballots I showed you, after the first round, there were 2 Republicans, and their overall total was 60%. They had 60% of the vote. Well, by the third round, a Democrat had then won that election. That's confusing. You would think that if that many people voted for the Republican, that a Republican would be in office, but it wasn't that way because a lot of Republicans only preferred one of the 2 Republicans in the race, and they couldn't stomach voting for the one who would not have won the primary. In the 2018 Maine House election, there was a congressman who was winning after the first round, and by the second round, he ended up losing to the Democrat. So it benefited the Democrat in both of these examples. And the first place person in a normal, traditional election did not win in this ranked choice voting. So remember, it should be easy to vote and hard to cheat, and ranked choice voting does not deliver on that promise. It's also a complicated system. Ranked choice voting makes it where you have to fill out so many bubbles, and even in a current election, in a traditional race, if you scribble outside of the lines, your ballot is then, it goes to adjudication where people look at who you meant to vote for. Well, the possibility of this happening increases exponentially in ranked choice voting because you're filling out 4 times, 6 times the number of bubbles, and it just makes it a lot more complicated, and that is going to be difficult for voters to see that high of adjudication rates. One example of ranked choice voting being complicated and going really badly is in Alameda County, California. They had a school board race in Oakland, and after the race was certified, it turned out 2 months later that Fair Vote, a pro-ranked choice voting organization, they did an internal audit and figured out their algorithm was wrong. So they certified the wrong person as the winner. And the correct winner in that system had to sue to get his rightful seat on the school board. So it's so complicated that even the machines messed up in this. And why would we as voters who are already skeptical of machines want to give even more power to these machines and tabulators with a ranked choice voting election? It's much more difficult to do a full audit and to go through and see how things should have been, because with the eyes, this would take over and over again. It's really hard to trust and to verify. And then ranked choice voting, a third point, it disenfranchises voters. A study done by a pro-ranked choice voting organization found that nearly 1 in 3 voters don't rank multiple candidates. They like the way that you just go in, you find the one person to represent you, and so that's what they do. But if you do that in a ranked choice voting election, it's quite possible that your ballot will be exhausted, as they like to say. That's a fancy way of saying that your ballot gets thrown out and it's no longer counted in the true majority. So it's effectively disenfranchising voters. And one example of this happening was in 2021 in New York City in their mayor's race. There were 10 candidates. It took 8 rounds of tabulating to finally come up with a winner and give a fake majority. There were 140,000 voters who had their votes thrown out because they didn't rank all the way up to the 8th or 9th round. The principle of one person, one vote, that's what we have in America, but not under ranked choice voting. Now, why would anyone want ranked choice voting? Well, here are some claims that the proponents like to say. One of them is that they'll say Ranked choice voting is a bipartisan reform. And while it might be true that some Republicans get paid off to support ranked choice voting, they do. One of the strategies of this group is to hire lobbyists who are former Republican officials when they leave office, and they give them big salaries to go and lobby for ranked choice voting. But all the money coming to support ranked choice voting, it comes from mega donors on the left. So the same people who are funding open borders and pro-abortion policies are the ones who have the deep pockets funding ranked choice voting. So don't buy it when people say it's a bipartisan reform. That's not a good excuse. Another claim they make is that ranked choice voting makes campaigns more civil. Utah is another state that I work in, and this was one of the main things that they said that seemed to stick with the legislators in Utah, that it makes campaigns more civil. Well, one study done by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology at their election lab, it showed that it made no difference in civility, but what it did do is make the process a lot less transparent. So in a traditional election, candidates will usually be more aggressive with how they campaign toward one another, but in ranked choice voting, what happens is they have incentive to come across as kind and friendly to each other in public, and then the independent expenditures and all the dark money from their PACs are the ones doing the attack ads. So the candidates themselves may not be doing attack ads, but their people and their super PACs are funding those attack ads in ranked choice voting elections. Another claim is that it's basically the same as a runoff except quicker. Well, one, it's not the same as a runoff. Georgia has a traditional runoff where if there's not a true majority, the voters get a few weeks to reassess their candidates. In the top two, they will then cast their vote for one of those top two candidates. In ranked choice voting, it's not that way. You as a voter are being asked to make predictions about what may happen in subsequent rounds. And it's also not any guarantee to be quicker. There have been numerous times that there have been substantial delays in counting the votes where it's come up against the deadline to certify an election. So don't buy that piece of information. Then one more that they like to say is that traditional elections lead to officials who lack broad support. And that's not true. In states like Nevada and Arizona, where I live, there is a huge independent and no party affiliation population. To win a general election, you have to get a broad coalition, not just of your own party, but people who aren't affiliated with the party, and sometimes even people of the other party you're able to pick off. So it leads to a clear governing mandate in a regular election. In ranked choice voting, it's a lot less clear why some people win. Sometimes candidates who aren't popular in the first round will even say to voters, I know I'm not your first choice, but if you would make me your second choice, I'd appreciate that. So they campaign on, just fill me in as number two. And that's not a way to convince voters on ideas. Elections should be about policies and ideas, not some gimmick that's designed by political consultants. It's a failed experiment. In Alaska, they have ranked choice voting, but the citizens have gathered enough signatures to put it on the ballot in 2024. Just a couple weeks ago, that news was announced, so Alaska will get to vote as citizens on whether or not they want to keep ranked choice voting. In Utah, they had 23 cities and towns in their ranked choice voting program. That's down to 12 cities and towns, and they were on the brink of repealing it this session. Unfortunately, a few of the senators in the Utah Senate, they didn't vote this time around, but the program sunsets next year, and so it may be gone in Utah in another year. And then in Arizona, where I am, we're voting on a ballot resolution that would make it where our partisan primaries are protected so that we will not have the California-style jungle primaries, and this will also be a protection against ranked choice voting. But at the same time, the proponents there are gathering signatures to try and force ranked choice voting into our Constitution in Arizona. You can find more about the election reforms that we're doing at saveourelections.com, and that goes even more in depth about ranked choice voting. But as a summary on ranked choice voting, before I move on to federal, when you're talking to voters who want to know why it's a bad system, just remember the 3 points: that it's confusing, it's chaotic, and it disenfranchises voters. Those are or confusing, complicated, and disenfranchises voters. Those are the things that are easy to stick in your mind. And feel free to take a handout like that I have on all the chairs and share that information with
Is that website a federal website or is that an Arizona website?
So this is a Heritage Action elections website, not a federal one, but we try to include links to things like how to be a poll worker. So if you want to be an election day worker, we'll link to the federal websites, and we include a lot of other good information on ranked choice voting. Now on to the federal update. There's a lot going on at the federal level, and a lot of it is not great. But one thing that has been really good is a tool that we have called public comment. At the federal level, one of the best things that we can do as citizens is to submit public comments when the Biden administration issues a new regulation. Since Biden is not able to work with Congress, he is trying to do his whole agenda writing new regulations. But by law, he and his administration have to read and respond to every single unique regulation or every single unique comment before the regulation is implemented. And this has drastically slowed down a lot of Biden's agenda. One example is that earlier this year, or last year, there was the Title X with boys and girls sports. There were over 15,000 public comments submitted from Heritage Action citizens, and other groups added a lot more. And this made it where the Biden administration chose to pull the regulation and not go through with it. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. Biden will have a terrible regulation, citizens will knock it down, he'll wait a few months, change a few words, and then try again. But when citizens are vigilant and groups like us are letting you know, it makes it where these regulations can't just come into place. So that was a good one. And this one that I'm highlighting right now, Biden's kill switch, the deadline is today. So if you're interested in submitting a public comment on a Biden regulation where he's trying to implement alcohol breathalyzers in all cars so that the government can, on suspicion, choose to shut down your car, that's the regulation, where new cars will have that at a future date. So it totally is surveillance state, and it's going after our liberties. But Heritage Action activists have submitted almost 75% of the overall comments on this regulation so far. And if you want more information on how to submit a public comment, it's very easy. Great. If you go to heritageaction.com, it's going to be the first thing that you see where it says submit a public comment. You click on the link, you fill out your information with your name, email, and address, and this puts you in our system. It gives you a sample comment, and all you have to do is edit it, click submit, and it goes directly to the federal regulations website. So we make it where you can do it in just a few clicks, and it makes a real tangible difference because Biden has to read and respond.
He has to read them, or his little...
His staff, someone who works. I like your idea though. I like making Biden do it. It might make him smarter to read and respond to these comments. Now on to the Mayorkas conviction. We hope that the Senate will take it up, and we don't want them to dismiss. It's a long shot for them to convict, but it is good news that the House was able to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. He's the weakest link in the Biden administration because it's clear he violated his oath of office, he abused his authority, and he lied to Congress. The reasons are there to impeach him. He was impeached, and now it's over to the Senate. And so that's the ask, to call senators and let them know to hold the hearings. And that's what we want to see on that side. In the best border security bill, though, we keep going back to H.R. 2. H.R. 2 is the best thing that Congress has done yet on border security. That's also in the Senate's court and something that they haven't taken up yet. One more federal update on government spending. This is a fluid fight. There's a lot moving. But last week, Congress decided to pass another short-term CR or continuing resolution. So the new spending deadlines are March 8th and March 22nd. The House just put out their new spending bill for the March 8th deadline. It's 6 spending bills cobbled together. In Heritage Action, we issued a key vote against it. Even though Republicans are in the majority, we do not agree with the spending bill. We think it increases the levels and keeps them high. It doesn't do any meaningful reforms. So our message has always been over these last 2 years to Congress, if you're going to pass a spending bill, it has to decrease spending and it has to have meaningful reforms on border. It doesn't do either of them. If Congress wanted to, they could pick a fight, they could add H.R. 2 provisions onto the spending bill, but they're choosing not to do that. So we're hopeful that this bill gets voted down. If the government shutdown happens, that's not the worst thing in the world. A government shutdown is also not an end goal, though. It's a tool that can be used to try and get conservative policy done. So if Congress thinks that they have a better shot by shutting down different departments of government, which of course will not shut down essential services, then they should do that and they should continue the fight. But unfortunately, what we've seen on government spending from the House in the last 24 to 48 hours has not been encouraging. So call your members of Congress about that bill and tell them to vote no. Yes.
The other thing with that is they'll pass a spending bill, then they put a bond out, and China buys the bond. Now, what good are you doing unless you chop the head off that nasty snake?
Yeah. On China, there is a lot that they're trying to do to get our intellectual property, get our assets, so agree. There are many things that legislatures can do, even at the state level, to address China. So the federal government may not be likely to do that, but encouraging, in Utah, just a few days ago, they passed a China bill that would protect their contracts and their intellectual kind of products that they have, so that Chinese companies cannot come in and contract with these service providers. So some states are taking action to push back. That bill passed both the House and Senate, and it's waiting the signature of Governor Cox in Utah. But agree, China is a huge issue. Yes.
They're bringing over military men right now from China.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't even get it. They've all violated their oath.
Yeah.
They've all taken the constitutional oath. They've all violated their oath. So when are we, the people, going to do our job and remove them? Because really, I don't even know where we can go from here. We're not going to be able to do anything with the elections. I mean, they're going to cheat again with this ranked choice voting. I mean, seriously. I mean, this is just getting out of hand. We got Ukrainian military. I mean, they're strategically bringing these people in and dumping them with their planes. And now, I just heard yesterday that they have where they can fly, where they can fill out it through an app and get on any plane they want without an ID, without being a U.S. citizen, and go anywhere here in the United States.
That's the South Americans.
Well, I heard it can be
Ukrainians.
used for anybody,
No.
terrorists, illegals, whatever. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be used illegal. I don't think they're smart enough. I think they're using it, militias are using it to get here into the United States.
Yeah, a few things you touch on. First, on the ranked choice voting, so Nevada does not have it yet. That's a good thing. Hopefully that gets stopped and that they don't get it after this year. When it comes to people coming in through the southern border, yes, you're right. It's Chinese nationals. It is so many people who aren't even close to the U.S. in proximity who are coming in. But people are getting upset. It's blue states too, all over. You look at the videos in
Oh,
Chicago.
absolutely.
People are ticked at their government leaders. And so the people in power, they either have to listen or there's going to be repercussions this election. I wish it would happen before that, but
Yep,
people are upset. And
oh, beyond upset.
yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, tone down.
And I'm a woman,
People are ticked.
so,
And there's the crime aspect with people coming over, but there's also the social services drain. So states are having to spend millions and billions of dollars. I don't know what the estimate here in Arizona, the estimate is $2.3 billion a year on services for people who are illegal aliens. It's absolutely terrible, and people are feeling it because their tax dollars are not going toward them. Yes, huge problem. And then the third thing you touched on was the app. The federal government does have an app, and their strategy has been to allow people to come up through the ports of entry, claim that they're migrants, they're trying to get asylum, and then they get to fly wherever they want into the interior. So yes, that is also completely, that's calculated, that's on purpose.
and they just hired an illegal to overhead the elections
Yep.
down in California. Excuse me, but that's against the law.
That's all the data you need to see that this is not just coincidental. This is orchestrated by Biden and his people.
Obama. Yeah, but yeah, let's just say Obama.
Don't the conservatives have anything that we
Obama.
orchestrate except bitch and moan and do nothing about it? We're like sheep standing back eating our cud, and the Democrats are grouping.
Yeah,
And they got a plan and they go with it. All we do is bitch about it.
yeah, they're in power. One of the things that Project 2025 that I talked about earlier is our plan on the right. So Hillary Clinton was on CNN talking about how it's going to completely and dramatically change America. So that's a good thing. If Clinton thinks that this is going to dramatically change America, we need more of that. We need more of the offensive plan. And so that's what we tried to do with Project 2025, but we need the power from a conservative in order to use that. Yes,
How many states have that are whatever?
ranked choice voting. There are 2 states that do it at the federal level. That's Maine and Alaska. And there's several other states where they have an opt-in where cities and school boards can choose to do it. But the momentum really is on the side to get rid of it. Georgia's another state where they voted to ban it. I think it just passed the House. They have to pass it in the Senate and go to the governor as well. But a lot of people who didn't know what ranked choice voting was a few years ago, they're hearing about it and they don't like what they see.
I never heard of it.
Yes.
How did we get to the ranked choice voting? Wouldn't we have had to vote on it to?
Yep, you have to vote it in, that's correct. So in Nevada, there's a ballot proposition. It was passed by the legislature, then last time around, it was approved by the citizens, and now there's one more time that
Approved by their
citizens.
machines.
Well,
And approved by their machines.
Okay,
not
fair
by
enough.
citizens.
Okay.
Yeah,
Approved by whatever the voting tabulating said, and now one more time around, citizens have a say, or presumably citizens have a say where whatever is the result will determine if it gets implemented in Nevada or not.
Same
Well,
with
if they
the-
pass it, how come the governor can't veto it?
The governor doesn't have a say because it was passed by the legislature to go onto the ballot to the citizens. It's a way of bypassing the governor to give it as a question to the citizens instead.
So that's on the ballot?
Yes, that will be on the ballot. It was on the ballot last time around, it'll be on the ballot this time around as a final time to either approve or reject it.
Primary
Why don't
ballot?
The general election ballot.
why can't we just take a hold of all of our elections locally and say, that's it, we're not using mail-in ballots, we're not using machines, we're doing just paper ballot, drop it in a bucket, count them up, and that's it.
Because we live in King Clark County, they control that little.
But we can fire them. I mean, you have that right? We are American citizens. We can fire that and start our own elections. We don't have to go by their rules.
They appointed, those are appointed positions, not elected positions.
But I'm just saying, when you go in, I've seen counties take over their school boards. They went in and just fired a whole board in one state. So why can't we do that?
We can't.
You could try, go for it. If you have a way to do it, go for it. Obviously, it'll get litigated, but if there are issues with the way elections are done here, it sounds like there are a lot of them, then yes, get the local elections to do it differently and see if you can get a lawsuit to challenge the way that procedures are done at the county level and at the Secretary of State's office. Any other topics that you have for me?
I'm guessing that the reason RNC probably passed this last time was because people didn't understand.
That's correct.
I think so.
I didn't.
I've heard a lot from a lot of people that they didn't even know that was going to be on the ballot. So that's quite possible.
The people that are for it don't understand it at all, and a lot of the media puts out, false propaganda about it, and so they fall for it, people fall for it.
Any other questions that you have for me?
What are these petitions we sign, where are they going, what will they do?
Yeah. I was going to touch on that last. So the handouts on your chair, I brought you a ranked choice voting handout. That's something that's good to share with people. It has digestible information, basically everything I talked about. And then the half sheet, that's to join Sentinel, which is our grassroots advocacy community. So if you want to get our action alerts about what's going through Congress, different ways you can submit public comments, and then during Nevada legislative session, bills that are going through the legislature, fill that out. It's no cost to join, and that'll just get you those action emails from us to you.
Whereabouts that on this form?
It's the half sheet. And those, when you fill it out, just hand it to me by the end of the meeting, and that'll just go to me, and then I'll enter it in and dialogue with you after that over email and phone and text and however it's used. Any last questions? All right, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janice, for having the insight to bringing down the board.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.